classic styling, traditional balsa construction, brushless power, the merging of the old with the new. Old school has gone high tech. A 78-inch powered glider that offers all skill levels, great performance at a low price. Is this the sailplane for you? Well, let's have a look. Opening the box, the Vista comes well packaged with generous use of packing tape to keep everything in place, with major components individually wrapped in plastic. The airframe itself is covered very nicely with an iron-on film that sports a rather colorful scheme. I did not notice any sagging of the covering. All the control surfaces come pre-hinged for your enjoyment using iron-on film. The motor is pre-mounted and the fuselage has air cooling vents in the nose and under the fuselage. The battery hatch is also pre-installed using rubber bands to hold it down. The included Outrunner motor is fairly large at 30 millimeters in diameter and roughly 26 millimeters long. Out of curiosity, I pulled out the speed controller, but unfortunately there are no markings on it. However, the manual states that it can handle up to 30 amps. It does come with a Dean's connector installed. I like the fact that it comes with a fairly large 12 by 6.5 inch folding prop, which should provide plenty of thrust. And not to be forgotten are the big bag of goodies, Velcro, including some rubber bands, and a metal and wood laminated wing spar. All in all, the kit comes as just 6 major sub-assemblies. Following the manual, the first step is to glue in the wing spar into one wing half. This requires copious amounts of 30-minute epoxy to be poured down the wing spar slot. And once the cavities have filled, slowly insert the spar while wiping away the excess epoxy with denatured alcohol. The intent is to cram as much epoxy into the hole as will fit. Once one wing half is done, repeat the gluing for the other wing. Now just dab a little epoxy onto the protruding spar and exposed ring rib. Then slide the 2 wing halves together while once again wiping away excess epoxy. A good idea is to add a couple of strips of tape to keep everything together and set it aside to dry. Next is on to the tail. Carefully strip away the covering and then use the built-in alignment pins to test mount the horizontal stabilizer. Once in position, use something pointy to make depression marks on the covering outlining the rear fuselage sides. Using a sharp knife or soldering iron, cut away the center covering using the marker lines made in the previous step. Once again, place the stabilizer into position with a weight and use a ruler to check if it's level. If not level, sand the high side a little bit at a time to even things out. When satisfied, glue the stab on. Once dry, test fit the rudder and mark the outline of the triangle fillet. Remove the covering and glue everything together. Use a drafting triangle to ensure everything is straight, and then hold in place with tape and T-pins. Lastly, glue in the wing dowels, and we can now move on to the final steps. The control rods are pre-installed, so we just need to connect them to the tail surfaces. The Vista can accept a wide range of servo sizes. In this case, I used the Futaba S3115s, which have plenty of torque for the application. The servo rails are placed into the fuselage slots and are slid into position to match the servo size. Once satisfied with the position, simply glue into place. Use the hardware supplied with the servos to mount the servos. With the control surfaces locked in neutral, mark the bend point on the control rods at the servos. Carefully bend the rods up 90 degrees and then trim with wire cutters to match the plastic rod end thickness. Install and connect the receiver up to the servos, and we're ready to move on to the final step. The 16-page manual details the control throws for both high and low rates, so refer to your transmitter's manual for setting up endpoints and dual rates. Install the propeller assembly using the supplied components. But be careful to leave a roughly an 1/8 inch gap between the fuselage nose and spinner backplate. Otherwise, the motor mount screws can cause rubbing. A single screw holds on the nose cone. The Vista comes with large decals to spruce up the model if you desire. To make it easier to apply the large lettering, I use window cleaner to slide them into place and then wipe the excess fluid off. With that, the next step is to see how she flies. Picking one of the few dry and sunny days after a spell of rain, I eagerly prepared the Vista for flight using a half dozen of the supplied wing rubber bands. With the final step of plugging in the 3S2200 LiPo pack, I was ready to see how she took to the air. Instead of simply gunning the throttle and seeing what happened, I decided to do a couple of power-off hand launches so as to check control authority and general handling. It is a glider, after all. Once satisfied of no irregularities, it was time to add throttle and see what she really can do. Just using half throttle at first, I was surprised at how good the climb out was. A few low-level laps to work out the trims, and then it was time to see what happened when the might of full throttle was applied. And holy cow, I was not prepared for this simple-looking glider to go almost vertical and sustain it until out of sight. The Vista has more than enough power to pull you out of trouble, and then put you back into it. Pulling the power back, the speed controller has a very good brake pre-programmed into it, and it stops the propeller cold. Settling into a glide, The Vista's controls are very well balanced and responsive, even on low rates. I found the plane very stable in pitch and roll with a very good glide ratio. I think it should please both beginners and experienced pilots. At low rates, the Vista was very forgiving to large control inputs, but still responsive. The glide is so good that I often overshot my intended landing spot to its very flat glide slope. The Vista should have no problems working any thermals it comes across. The Vista flies very stable, almost hands-off. The Vista would make a great glider for someone with very low time in flying model airplanes. The bright and contrasting color scheme is quite easy to see. I found the 2200 mAh battery pack more than enough capacity to do dozens of climbs to altitude. Back on high rates, the Vista is fairly aerobatic, easily performing some unpowered loops and stall turns. With the power on, I could even coax a few barrel rolls out of it. While the Vista probably couldn't be called a high-performance sailplane, it is a very easy and honest plane to fly, and it also looks great. All in all, the Vista is a fun and capable powered glider that offers low-cost fun and simplicity merged with classic styling and construction.
Years ago, I learned to fly on a Goldberg Gentle Lady. I built it from the kit and I probably didn't do a very good job with it, but it flew, and it actually flew pretty good. It taught me the basics of learning to fly model airplanes, and I literally flew the wings off of it. My next plane was the Goldberg Electra, which was basically a Gentle Lady with an old RC car, can motor, and a big pack of 6L NiCads. It was heavy with lugging those old NiCads around in the nose, but it flew, and actually flew okay. In fact, for a while, it was one of my go-to planes for some nice, relaxed flying. In the Vista, I feel a lot like that, those early days of a nice, honest plane, no frills, just a really good flying, low maintenance, low adrenaline, easy day of flying. And this harkens back to those days with my old Gentle Lady and Electra in style and performance, except now with modern technology, it flies much better.
What are you trying to do?